With the Sunday action of Week 15 of the NFL season coming to a close, we now have a little bit of a better look as to what the draft order might look like and dive into some of the possibilities for what the 2024 NFL draft is going to go ahead and show us. Let's dive right into this 2024 mock draft here. We will be including trades and going through every pick of the first round, starting with the Chicago Bears at number 1. Obviously, this pick comes from Carolina, and I think you do need to reset the quarterback clock. Best case scenario, the rest of the season, Justin Fields looks good. You can trade him for a relatively high pick, but I think that you've got to fire Eberflus. You've got to move on from Justin Fields, kind of reset that clock, get yourself a franchise quarterback. Luckily, you do have two great options in Caleb Williams and Drake May. Gonna go with Williams here. I've mocked May to them before, but I do still think that Williams is likely to be the first pick, especially with kind of how May ended the season, maybe not putting up the best statistics, not looking the best on film as well. So I think Williams still does have a little bit of an edge in that department, and I think he is going to most likely be that first overall pick for the Chicago Bears. At number 2, we do have the Patriots and Drake May. I think this just makes way too much sense. We'll see, kind of what this Patriots team looks like. I do have them making a trade that will affect kind of a huge outlook of their franchise later on in this video. But at the quarterback position, Mac Jones just simply hasn't been giving you what you need at that spot. There's not a ton to work with in that room, but, there is just giant issues with what Mac Jones has produced. You got to reset this quarterback clock as well. Go ahead and get Drake May, who is way more talented than Mac Jones really ever was and could give you that true franchise quarterback upside in New England. At number 3, another kind of chalk easy pick here. We have Marvin Harrison Jr. out of Ohio State. Really, I think one of the safest, most complete prospects just in general in recent draft classes. I just think you're going to get a very high floor, incredibly talented wide receiver out of Marvin Harrison. That's going to be a big player for Kyler Murray, assuming that they continue to keep him as that franchise quarterback, continuing to get him great weapons like Marvin Harrison Jr. to pair with Marquise Brown, who slots in as kind of a more natural number 2 receiver, along with some of their other guys. Trey McBride has looked good for him as well. So I think they could certainly kind of turn things around and be a much more dangerous team in 2024 with a much improved passing offense. At number 4 for the Washington Commanders, I think it's going to be Olu Fashanu out of Penn State. I do think they will move on from Ron Rivera, but I do still think that Sam Howell may get a chance to be the quarterback for next year, especially if they don't finish with one of those top 2 picks and go ahead and have an opportunity to take Caleb Williams or Drake May. I think that Fashanu and protecting whoever that quarterback is going to be incredibly important. Fashanu is such a good pass protector. He's very polished, would have been a top 10 pick last year, decided to return to school and did some really good things at Penn State. So I definitely think this Commanders team needs to upgrade the offensive line. Right now, Leno is the left tackle, and he is okay, but he's getting up there in age. Really isn't anything special by any means. Fashanu would be a big upgrade in that spot. The first trade that we do have here is the Chicago Bears trading down, and I do think that there is going to be some teams interested in coming up for a franchise quarterback, and I think the Falcons could be one of those teams. Not too sure what it would take, perhaps a couple of seconds here, something like that, but we'll say that they give up 10 and 42 for 5. That may or may not be enough to get it done, perhaps a later pick as well, and we will go ahead and move this through. The Falcons move up to number 5. I think they need to get themselves a franchise quarterback. Desmond Ridder really hasn't been good enough for this team. They've benched him for Taylor Heineke. Things didn't go well. They just lost to the Panthers this past weekend, so they are not necessarily in a good place. Not sure that Arthur Smith is going to be the head coach there next year, but regardless, I think they need to get their franchise quarterback, whether it's Arthur Smith trying to save his job or a new guy coming in and potentially having his pick of who he wants to be the franchise quarterback. I think Jaden Daniels is really going to be a player that goes high in this draft. He has just ridiculous rushing upside. He's shown really, really good things in structure this year as well. Had a great connection with Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr., and there was just so much high-flying talent on that LSU offense, and Jayden Daniels took advantage, won the Heisman Trophy. I definitely think he is going to be a player that is going to be very well highly thought of throughout this draft process. I think the Falcons could certainly trade up and take him to be their face of the franchise. Then we have the Jets at number 6. Going to go with Joe Alt, whether it's Aaron Rodgers next year, which is certainly going to be the plan, or a franchise quarterback down the road. This pass protection needs to be better. Mekhi Becton has kind of been a turnstile when he's been out there playing, and you really can't consistently rely on him to be out there as well. So I think Elijah Vera Tucker is going to be a solid right tackle for them, but you need to solidify that other bookend, and I think Joe Alt would certainly be a good player for that. Just so consistent, such good technique. He's got great size, good athleticism, really just kind of a prototypical plug-and-play starting left tackle for many years in the NFL. At number 7, the New York Giants. I think you certainly have to consider quarterback, but with there already being 3 of them gone at pick 7, I don't think they're necessarily going to reach to potentially take another Daniel Jones type at that spot, especially when you need wide receiver help desperately, and there's such good talent on the board like Malik Neighbors. I think in almost every draft class, Neighbors would be the number 1 wide receiver in the class, but it's just Marvin Harrison Jr. is that good. Neighbors has ridiculous separation ability, his tempo within his routes, his understanding of where to attack defenses, his speed, his athleticism, even his yards after catch is really impressive. This guy is just a complete number 1 wide receiver. It's something that the Giants have missed, really going back to Odell Beckham Jr. as on his rookie contract for the Giants, and Neighbors would provide that alpha number 1 wide receiver for him. Whether it's Daniel Jones, whether it's somebody else at that quarterback spot, I do think they need a reliable number 1 target, and Neighbors could certainly provide that. Another major trade here, we have the LA Chargers, and this isn't really going to work with the trading system here, but I'm going to have them trading with the New England Patriots. And I think that this is going to be for Bill Belichick. So we are just going to go ahead and force this trade, say that they're giving up, the second round pick. But in reality, I think that this is going to be kind of just a 1-for-1 swap with Bill Belichick. I think that for Belichick, he would want to come to the Chargers because he has Justin Herbert. If he can tinker with that defense like he's done a very good job of doing and kind of be able to get that as a really solid unit, you already have a lot on that offensive side of the ball to work with, where maybe he hasn't been as consistent at being a really good developer of talent and play caller, things of that nature. And then for the Chargers, you get a proven guy that has shown he can win, it can turn around defenses, and then you already have your franchise quarterback established. You can keep an offensive mind in the building, or let Belichick bring one in as well, and then all of a sudden you feel like you could really compete with this team because you want to maximize Justin Herbert and this window. So I am going to have them go ahead and trade the 8th overall pick to the New England Patriots, which puts them back on the clock. They already had Drake May. Going to go with Brock Bowers out of Georgia. You already have Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, but this guy is really, really special. He's somebody that I think would fit the Patriots culture very well. And I think that although Belichick is leaving, I think Gerard Mayo is the most likely candidate to take over this spot. He still has a lot of that Patriot way mentality and a lot of those things that made the Patriots so good for so long. And I think Bowers absolutely encapsulates that very, very well. If you pair Drake May with Brock Bowers, all of a sudden the offense has a little bit of a jolt. The defense, you think, could potentially be pretty decent with some of the players that they have there, including Matt Judon and some other guys. So all of a sudden that brings a little bit more life to this Patriots team and can be a very, very interesting fit there. At number 9, the Tennessee Titans. I do think that most likely Vrabel is going to survive this change, and I do think he should as well. And that he is going to invest in the trenches here. Going to go with J.C. Latham out of Alabama. This guy is just gigantic. He can play, either tackle spot most likely. He played right tackle at Alabama, but they can certainly move him around. They need to get way tougher and way better in the trenches. Protect Will Levis, who is hopefully going to be the future of that team for him. And I think that Latham would be a very good, solid pick for them in the top 10, which brings us to the Chicago Bears, who traded back with Atlanta. Now up at pick 10, going to have them going with Rome Odunze, the wide receiver out of Washington. he is kind of a nice complement to what DJ Moore does. He's more of that contested catch, ball winner, deep downfield threat. He has really good route running, and obviously, is an incredibly talented player. Was Michael Penix's number one target at Washington, and truly had a dominant season. I think pairing him with DJ Moore, and then getting Caleb Williams as well. You already have Cole Kmet and some other guys on that offensive line. I think this could be a really solid offense and be a really appealing job for a lot of head coaching candidates, just with all of the options they're going to have. At number 11, we have the Green Bay Packers on the clock. Going to go with Taliese Fuaga out of Oregon State. This guy's just so much fun to watch. He is a road grader. He's got decent athleticism. He doesn't necessarily have the deepest kick slides and the ability to really be able to keep up with some of the elite speed rushers, but he's just so good in the running game. He's got really good technique in the passing game. He's tough to get through. You're not going to run through him because of how big he is, and I just really, really like him. I think that this Packers offensive line has been a little inconsistent. You love what you've seen from Jordan Love, especially kind of in the second half of the season, so continue to protect him, put pieces around him, get better in the running game. I think it just helps this Packers offense get a lot more consistent and a lot more productive as well. At number 12, the Las Vegas Raiders, going to go with Kool-Aid McKinstry out of Alabama. I think that McKinstry could certainly be that first corner off the board, and this Raiders team definitely needs some help in that corner spot. Obviously, you could certainly look to address quarterback. Like I said, kind of the top three guys for me that I think deserve to go top 15 are already gone at this point. You could certainly take a J.J. McCarthy or Bo Nix or Michael Penix, but I think that McKinstry is going to be the best player that they can take to help this defense out. It's really kind of been a liability in the secondary for quite a few years, and I think that taking McKinstry would be a big step into alleviating some of those struggles. You have already got Nate Hobbs and some guys on the defensive line, so definitely looking to improve that defense for the Raiders. And that brings us to number 13, the Seattle Seahawks, going to go with Jerzon Newton out of Illinois. I think their edge play has been better this year. Their front seven play has been a little bit better as well, but Jerzon Newton is by far the best interior defensive lineman in this class, really the only one I think that deserves to go in the first round, and so I definitely think the Seahawks could look to upgrade that spot. You traded for Leonard Williams, you have Jerron Reed and a couple other guys on that defensive line, but I think that they're all relatively replaceable. Newton is one of those guys that'll bring a young jolt into that room, be somebody that can rotate in and really start to take some big minutes down the stretch as well, so I definitely think that Newton could be a really, really good player for the Seahawks front seven. Then we have the Saints at number 14. Going to go with our first edge rusher off the board. Going to be Dallas Turner out of Alabama. I think he's incredibly explosive. He's somebody with the speed, athleticism, bend that is really intriguing for a lot of teams, and I think he may go against kind of what the Saints have done in the past. We'll see if Dennis Allen and the staff is still there and they still have kind of the same personnel preferences, but I think Turner kind of provides something a little bit different from what they've had. They typically prefer the bigger body, 270-pound Cam Jordans of the world, but I think they do lack some of that explosiveness and the ability to threaten the outside shoulder of offensive tackles, and Turner really kind of provides that. He's the most explosive athlete at that edge rusher spot, and I definitely think there's a good chance he's the first edge rusher off the board because of it. At number 15, we have Laiatu Latu, the edge rusher out of UCLA. I definitely think that there is a chance that Latu drops down the board a bit due to his injuries. He medically retired from football for a bit, came back, and has been so good at UCLA. Was just dominant, had a variety of pass rush moves, just such a good, complete player, and I think he would likely be a top 10 pick, maybe even higher if there was no medical concerns, but I definitely think there will be some teams that just don't feel comfortable drafting him, don't have him on their board just because of that. I think the Broncos are a team, though, that could use another jolt in that pass rush game. I think Baron Browning and Jonathan Cooper have been decent players, but I definitely think you could still add a number one alpha rusher. Somebody like Laiatu Latu would certainly help provide that extra ability to get after the passer. The AFC especially, such good quarterbacks in their own division as well. You've got Herbert and Mahomes, so definitely want to get after the quarterback, and Latu could help do that there. At 16, the Pittsburgh Steelers going to go with Nate Wiggins out of Clemson. I think Wiggins is perhaps the best pure cover corner in this draft. He's not necessarily the most physical coming up and playing through contact, being able to tackle, but I think when it comes to pure coverage, he is likely the best in this class, and I think the Steelers have some pieces on the back end, but Patrick Peterson really hasn't looked very good this year. A lot of the guys they've moved to haven't been overly productive. You feel good about Joey Porter Jr. developing into that number one corner, but getting somebody like Wiggins across from him, especially in a division that features T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, Mari Cooper, all of the great players in that division, I think getting multiple great cover corners is going to be a priority for the Steelers. You can certainly take a quarterback, but I do think some of those guys like Bo Nix and some of those guys are a little bit more high floor players than that high ceiling guy that the Steelers are really looking for. I don't think Pickett's the answer, but didn't love any of those picks for him at this point in time. I think Wiggins would be a good alternative. At 17, we have the Cardinals on the clock. This is the Houston pick, and I have them going with Jared Verse, the edge rusher out of Florida State. Would have been a top 10 pick last year. I thought he had really, really good moments this year as well. Just was a little bit more inconsistent, but really came on down the stretch as well. He's got, kind of that prototypical build for the edge rusher position. He's shown he could win with power, win with speed and athleticism. He's got some really good traits as well. I think he's a very complete, very talented player. And this Cardinals defensive line is they've had some nice young guys step up, but you still definitely need that number one edge rusher to get after the quarterback, and I definitely think that Verse could be that player for them, and I think Gannon will want to add an edge rusher to really kind of shape his defense. At number 18, we do have another trade. I have the Minnesota Vikings coming up with the Buffalo Bills. Likely wouldn't be too much to come up, but I do think that it is something that with this scenario, the Vikings do want to jump up, get their quarterback of the future, maybe a little bit concerned about the Buccaneers taking the guy that they want. So I am going to go with the Vikings trading up and taking J.J. McCarthy out of Michigan. I think McCarthy's going to be somebody that is very heavily contested. He's not super highly rated in my rankings or in PFF's rankings here as well. But I think that the league is really going to like him. He's accurate. He's got a good arm. He's got really good athleticism. All he's done in college is win and has been really, really good. So I think that there's a big argument that you could make that McCarthy is a really, really talented player that hasn't even scratched the surface of what he could be. But I think there's really kind of been not a lot that he's shown in college because it's a run-heavy offense, and Michigan just hasn't asked him to do too much, especially in some of the big games. They rely a lot on the offensive line and the defense and the running game. So I think McCarthy will be a big wild card from kind of what I've heard. I think he's going to go higher than a lot of people think, and I think the Vikings will want to trade up and get their guy, whether it's McCarthy, whether it's Penix or Bo Nix. I think that quarterback could certainly be in play for them. And then at 19, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Once again, quarterback definitely going to be in play here, and I'm going to go with Michael Penix Jr. out of Washington. I think that Penix would be highly thought of, especially if he were 2 years younger and didn't deal with all the injuries that he's dealt with. I think he'd be a surefire, top 15 pick. But there is just some concerns about him being an older prospect. He was really good last year, but he really had his first breakout season this year. And he's dealt with season-ending injuries multiple years throughout his career. Pretty much his entire career at Indiana, he just had just season-ending injury after season-ending injury. So you're a little bit concerned about that, but when he's on the field, he's been incredibly productive. The ball flies off his hand. He's accurate. He's a good decision maker, and he has been so fun to watch at that Washington program. I definitely think that the Buccaneers could use a player like that to lead their franchise. I don't think Baker Mayfield has proven that he is going to be that guy. The Bills traded down just 2 spots, and I think that they still will be able to get one of the players they'd be interested in. Going to go with Troy Franklin out of Oregon. You obviously already have Stephon Diggs, and Josh Allen loves him, but I think you need somebody that would be an improvement over Gabe Davis, and I think that Franklin really would be that replacement there. He is tall and a little bit slender, but he's got that deep speed. He's that true kind of Z receiver. Let him be that flanker and just dominate off of, he's not going to be lined up against press coverage all the time. You just get him free releases and let him run. He's very, very good on a vertical route tree, and he is an incredibly impressive player. I think in kind of that vertical system, especially with Josh Allen throwing him the ball, he could be incredibly dangerous and definitely would be a really good scheme fit for them in Buffalo. Then at pick 21 for the Rams, I am going to go with Cooper DeJean out of Iowa. DeJean can play all over the back end of that defense. He can play corner. He can play safety. There's a lot of different options for where he is going to be best, and he's electric with the ball in his hands as a punt returner and really, really good in that area. I think for the Rams, the secondary has been a little bit lackluster. You've gotten decent play out of Ahkello Witherspoon, but really need that number one corner, and Cooper DeJean could certainly kind of turn into that player for them. He's got great tools and a lot of things that you look for in a great shutdown number one corner. At number 22, the Indianapolis Colts, I'm going to go with a receiver. Going to go with Keon Coleman out of Florida State, who was really thought of as a surefire top 15 player. And I think that there has been a little bit of some cooling down on Coleman, as he wasn't nearly as dominant through the second half of the season, and there is just some concerns about his ability to create separation at the next level. But I think that he would be a very natural replacement for Michael Pittman if they do lose him. He's somebody that's an impending free agent, and I definitely think that Coleman would fit in very, very nicely within the offense there if they do lose him. He's just that contested catch, true ball winner type, and I think Anthony Richardson will really, really like having a guy like that. I think there is still a chance that Coleman is going to be a dominant player and could go really high in this draft. I think there's a lot of variance with what his NFL career looks like, but I think he'd be a good fit on the Colts in that role. At number 23 for the Jacksonville Jaguars, going to go with Amarius Mims, the tackle out of Georgia. I think the offensive line play has been pretty disappointing for the Jaguars. I think really you can line Mims up on either side. He's the right tackle for Georgia, but I think you can move him all around the offensive line, kind of wherever you need him. I think he can be really effective. Has dealt with injuries this year, but when he's played has been incredibly productive in the SEC and really, really looks like he belongs. Could be a dominant first-round pick. We just haven't seen a ton of him, so a little bit of a risk there, but you could also be getting kind of a top 10 player that you just don't really know how good he is because he hasn't played that much. Would be a big upgrade for that Jacksonville offensive line. And then for the Cincinnati Bengals, also going to go with an offensive lineman. He is listed as an offensive tackle here. Troy Fontenot out of Washington. I think he is most likely going to be an interior player. I think the Bengals have just been a little bit squishy, especially at left guard. Cordell Volson has improved throughout this year, but really has not been a great player for them. So I think getting somebody like Fontenot who could play really any of the five positions on the offensive line, I think that versatility is just going to be so valuable for a team that is going to be looking to compete with championships. Burrow has gotten injured a little bit more than you'd like to see, no doubt about it. So protecting him should be priority number one, and I think Fontenot just provides great versatility. He's a really, really talented player as well. So I think he would be a good pick for the Bengals at number 24, which moves us to number 25, the Chiefs. And I am going to go with wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU. I really liked Brian Thomas Jr. when I was watching. I was very pleasantly surprised with his tape. He's a really, really good vertical threat, and I think that he fits perfectly with what Mahomes wants and needs in his wide receivers. They just haven't been good enough. Rashee Rice has made some plays and been a decent player, but you got to move away from Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore and some of these guys that just have not been productive for you. I just think that Brian Thomas Jr. would be an electric playmaker, a great downfield threat, and somebody that Mahomes would have very, very good chemistry with. Then at 26, this is the Browns pick. The Texans are picking here. I'm going to go with Chop Robinson out of Penn State. I think that he is an athletic freak. He's got so much juice coming off the edge. We talked about Dallas Turner being the most explosive and just true athlete out of this group, and Chop Robinson may even have him beat or is right there with him. He is just dominant, blowing off the ball, and I think that he could go way higher than this. I do just think there has been a little bit of a lack of production outside of some really good plays here and there, so I think Robinson is somebody that needs to just kind of put it together a little bit more consistently, but if I trust anybody pretty much in this league to do it, D'Amico Ryans would be the guy. Pairing him with Will Anderson would be an awesome pairing for this Texans team. At 27, the Dallas Cowboys going to go with Braylon Trice out of Washington. He's been really productive, especially towards the end of the season. He's a little bit bigger. He's a really good run defender, and I think that he's kind of figured out some great pass rushing moves as well. Been a really, really nice player for Washington this year. Obviously, for the Cowboys, you do have Micah Parsons, you have DeMarcus Lawrence, but getting that third rusher in there and somebody that can play some of the early downs at the edge spots, while Parsons may be a little bit more mobile, moving him around, just using matchups. I think that Trice could be a really good player for them. I don't think the Cowboys have any giant glaring holes, and so Trice would be a very, very nice pick for them to kind of shore up that run defense on early downs and provide another rusher for them in pass rushing situations. For the Lions, going to go with Terrion Arnold out of Alabama. He's a nice press man, kind of physical corner. He's been very productive on the ball, has very good ball skills, and I definitely think that the Lions could stand to upgrade their corner room. It's kind of a mismatch of decent guys, but you really need somebody to kind of come in and guard number one wide receivers, and Arnold could be that player for them. I don't think they really have that guy on the roster now, so I think Arnold would be a very good pick for this Lions team and somebody that could shore up some of their deficiencies in the secondary. Then we have the Dolphins at pick 29. Going to go with Graham Barton out of Duke. He's just somebody that you can move all across the line. I think he can play anywhere from center to tackle. Currently the left tackle for Duke, but I think that whether it's injuries to Teron Armstead or Austin Jackson, who's been much better this year, but still has been an inconsistent player over the course of his career, providing insurance at the tackle spots there, or if you lose Connor Williams at center, or Liam Eichenberg hasn't been playing up to par, I think you have a guy that can just fill in and be a really, really solid player for you. Protect Tua, let him just distribute the ball like he does so well to those superstar wide receivers, and I think Barton would be a very, very good pick for this Dolphins team. Just provide that extra insurance on the offensive line. At the Eagles spot here at number 30, going to go with a corner, and that's Kamari Lassiter out of Georgia. I know that the Eagles have Slay and James Bradbury, but those guys are both getting older. They've been way less productive this year than they have been last year and in years past. And, I do think they've got some guys in the waiting, Keely Ringo, Eli Ricks, both on the roster, but I think none of those guys are really guys I was super high on. I think Lassiter could come in and be that real replacement level type player for the superstars that they've had at the cornerback spot, somebody that you can really develop into that number one, number two corner that you can really rely on. At number 31 for the San Francisco 49ers, going to go offensive line, Jordan Morgan out of Arizona. I think you can move him all across the offensive line as well. He does play left tackle for Arizona, and I do think they need to get a little bit better on this offensive line. Trent Williams has been dealing with injuries. The interior hasn't been super great as well, so I definitely think that's the biggest area of concern for this 49ers team. I think Morgan could provide a little bit of stability to that and some high-end upside for the future as well, perhaps after Trent Williams at the left tackle spot. And then for the Ravens at pick 32, going to go with JT Tuimoloau out of Ohio State. Tuimoloau is a really, really good run defender. He's somebody that can set the edge and be a dominant player at that spot. He can provide some pass rush juice with especially power. His bull rush is very impressive, but he's just kind of a different type of player from what the Ravens already have with some of those speed rushers with Owe and those types of guys, Ojabo, the other one. So I definitely think that Tuimoloau could be a great pick, just provide some versatility and something different for that defensive front and could be a great player for them. That's going to do it for my 2024 NFL mock draft. Let me know who you want your favorite team to take, who should go higher, who should go lower. Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this kind of content, please hit the like button down below. While you are down there, subscribe as well. All of that just helps push this video out to other NFL and NFL draft fans just like you. I would truly appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. I will catch you in the next one.